What's up, upstanders? Dr. O here. And so, you ever see, I want you to think about any type of video you've ever saw for any type of aid of any sort in your life. Whether it's a school fundraiser, maybe if you went to some type of a school, a private school or charter school, and they're having like fundraisers for financial aid and scholarships and stuff like that. Or if you're looking at commercials for like feeding children across the globe and all of that other type of stuff. If you've had experiences like me, the majority of the times the faces have been black faces, right? And I've had my kids in private school since my oldest is 18 now. And I've seen it when I was coming up, the whole college experience. And over the last few years, some of the colleges will start to diversify a little bit the way they look, but you'll never not see a black face. Some of y'all who were there in the 80s, I guess you had to be there. Best music. Anyway, uh, the Sally Struthers commercials with the Ethiopian, kids with the popping bellies out, and remember Mariah Carey saying, "How could they be starving? Their bellies are full." But I'm seeing this narrative over and over again with USAID. And over the last few weeks, with everything that Trump and Musk are doing to destroy USAID, I keep hearing these stories about USAID does incredible work in feeding starving children in Africa. Remember when y'all were growing up? Finish your food. Kids are starving in Africa. Like, why is Africa? Why I know why, but Africa's always the narrative for the starving, hungry face. And I was growing up when I would hear people say things like "finish your food." People are well, my parents would never say that. People are starving in Africa. I'm like, yo, people are starving in Southeast DC. People are starving in Boston, Massachusetts. People are starving in Kentucky. They're starving in Mississippi. But we always put the face on the African face of starvation and hunger and despair. And so, why is Elon Musk pulling the funds away from poor kids in Africa, in the Sudan, and all of this other type of stuff? And I'm like, yo, okay, it's wrong and it's messed up and it's true. And he's doing it because he wants to and he's racist and he hates black people, of course. That's been established as far as, I don't know, anyone else can tell. But USAID doesn't only work on the African continent. USAID works in like every continent that's not the United States. I don't know, probably got some stuff going on here as well. Or did like people in Ukraine eating off of USAID, people in other European countries that benefited from USAID, people in South America, people in the Middle East, all across the globe have been benefiting from USAID. And here's the thing: one of the things you got to understand is that, and especially in this climate we're in now, saying that black people are being forced to suffer the most from USAID, that doesn't build people's compassion. That doesn't make people say, "Oh shoot, bring it back." So if y'all really want to start painting a better picture of USAID and garner more sympathy, why don't you start putting some of the white faces on this? Start putting some of the Hispanic faces on it. Start putting some of the Asian faces on it. Start putting some of the Middle East faces in this conversation, in your imagery, in the stories that you're doing. You are reinforcing a narrative of the U.S. does all the work to only help poor, starving people in African countries with no clothes and their bellies popped open, which is not from overeating. So people don't know that. And this is problematic. And in the work that I do when I'm working with schools and we're having these conversations about creating communities where everybody can be celebrated and not tolerated, one of the first places I have them look at is the representation online. Who do they show when they're showing the sports teams? And who do they show when they're showing debates teams and robotics teams and all of that? And then who do they show when it's time to talk about financial aid and giving back to the school? And I got a surprise for you. There are black families who are in some of these private schools, many of these private schools, who don't need financial aid. But the stigma is there. And there could be a white student sitting right next to them whose family has used financial aid and nobody attaches the stigma to them. And this transfers over into the college spaces as well. So I appreciate the notion that people want to draw compassion when talking about the incredible work that USAID does, but they're not going to get as far as you think you can by just painting an African face on it. It kind of reinforces some of the biases and misconceptions that many of y'all already had about this concept of aid and who's the needy and so on and so forth. And I think that it makes sense for organizations and news outlets and anybody who's talking about USAID to really form a more complete picture. And if you're going to add some faces to it, like I said, add some non-black faces to it as well, because when people can actually see people look like them who actually benefit from this work, then they'll be more inclined to want to do something about it. Because as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, or maybe even months, showing black faces makes some people say, yo, word up, he can't cut it sooner. You know what I mean? And, it's not until people start seeing that their grain that they had on farmers that's supposed to be shipped out to parts of the world is not going anywhere, that they'll start caring a little bit more about USAID. But if you're going to paint a face on it as it relates to humanitarian acceptance, don't just put a black face on it. We've seen that movie before. Peace.